So this didn't used to be right here, it was somewhere else?
It was up the hill.
Oh.
Like people are like, well, why can't you just put a trailer there? Like, because the land is gone. People say, well, if you live in a remote area, you should be prepared to be isolated for a couple weeks at a time. And they were.
Mm-hmm.
But like my prep here, 80% of it was destroyed. There's some 20-inch and 24-inch steel I-beams that are rolled up like a piece of rope. You look at that and you just think, my God, how much force does it take to twist an I-beam into a knot? I'm in a camp kitchen here just temporarily. This is how I'm living now. I said, oh look, honey, X marks the spot. And my wife walked down here and she looked up and she said, look, it's not an X, it's a cross.
This is a map of western North Carolina. As most of you probably know, this area was ravaged by Hurricane Helene last year in the fall of 2024. Asheville was widely proposed as the epicenter of the destruction. It was the remote communities surrounding Asheville, however, that experienced some of the worst from the storm, as unprecedented hurricane conditions struck the state late in the night, leaving many people in these surrounding areas with flooded homes, being cut off from supplies and power, destroying key infrastructure and roadways, or worse. I did some volunteering at an aid station in Burnsville and afterwards decided to explore the more remote areas and hear the stories firsthand from some of the residents. I had heard that the area of Pensacola was especially devastated. I eventually came across a man named Mark who was a local working to support the community during the long rebuilding process. Many still without power and basic supplies, even many months after the landfall of the storm. I'm out here in Pensacola right now. There's still a lot of trees down for miles. Creeks are still flowing. Still a lot of cleaning up to do. First met Mark outside of an ancient general store that managed to survive the flood. And it was here that I came across a couple old timers that wanted to share some information, and he just came up to us and took it from there.
Now this looks like one tough home. You a Viking man or something?
I am now. You can tell by the beard, right?
After catching up with the mountain men for a little while, I managed to meet back up with Mark when I went to investigate a church that had a bus pushed into it by the flood. It was outside that church that I got to know Mark a little bit better, and he invited me to come and check out his property that recently got demolished by the flood, so I could see the damage firsthand.
All this was underwater. It was underwater all the way up to this first dip right here. So the water got up, 3/4 of the way up this berm right here. Power lines were down. I could drive this vehicle underneath power lines.
Yeah.
And my truck, I would just push him out of the way. So I've got creased, black scratches all along the top of my truck where I was driving these power lines. All these cyclonic activity, then you have the water and you have the mudslides and your rock slides on top of that. It winds up being a pretty powerful set of combinations. And I was in the Army for 21 years. I've been in combat zones, and I've seen places we deliberately destroyed. And although I've seen places with much higher mortality, I've never in my life seen a place with more damage to the physical infrastructure and to the land itself. Like people are like, well, why can't you just put a trailer there? They're like, because the land is gone. And you talk to a normal person, you try and explain to them the land is gone. Like, what does that even mean? They're like, it's gone, man. It's like, this is gone. I'm not getting this back. I got to put something else here.
Yeah.
So in the grand scheme of things, I was pretty lucky.
Yeah. And you seem to be helping people out and putting in.
The first 2 weeks, this was a total loss in my mind.
Yeah.
And so I fought my way back in. I was at a conference in Northern Virginia, and thankfully my wife was at a graduation. Had we been here, I think we would have died. So neither one of us were here, and I fought my way back in. On day 5 was the first day I could get in, and I brought in that Subaru and a trailer full of supplies, food, water, primitive medicines, bandages, generators, fuel, propane, things of that nature, and went up Spruce Pine where I have family, and forced my way in over there. And then my mom and dad were at Mitchell House, which is a retirement home, and I got to that place just in time to see them getting identifiers around their wrists and their ankles, and they were being flown out by Chinook, so they were rescued by aerial evacuation. And then I had a big decision to make. By that time I had contact with a neighbor. He told me my place wasn't worth coming to right now. It's too dangerous to be here. And I had to make a decision. Like, I have just enough fuel to go back to the last known good gas station in South Carolina. Or I can put it here, I can fight my way into here, try to get my side-by-side out and try to help people here. So the first 2 weeks, when I saw this place, I mean, you had to see it on that day. It looked like a total loss. And so I had some firearms in there, and I pulled all the things that were sensitive items, like, you know, serialized things that are controlled by the federal government. I pulled all that stuff out and declared everything else like just destroyed. I'm not going to try to rescue it, and then try to help other people for a couple weeks. And then a fella that has some heavy equipment did something pretty dramatic. He took an excavator, like a mini excavator, on that hill and dropped on that. That's about a 65–70% grade up there. And he dropped his excavator in over there with no way out. And then he forced his way up there, and then he diverted the water away from the cabin over the course of 8 hours, and he built himself a tiny little path out over there. So he did, and he cut this alternate means of ingress, because otherwise you were parking all the way over there. So yeah, that's way better than right there. Mm-hmm. And so he saved the cabin. You know, I literally had a river flowing through the cabin. It came in the back door of the kitchen, it came out around the chimney, and the hollow underneath the front porch, which was all wraparound stone, about 5 foot high. It was hollow space back there. Now there's, you know, 4 foot 6 inches of sediment that's built up back there. So it acted like a big giant sand trap. That shows you the volume of material that filtered through the house. And you know, when I say 15,000 pounds of debris in the first floor, that's a real number. Yeah. You know, like we pulled 265 gallon buckets of material out with, you know, we did it with coal shovel, just 1 5-gallon bucket at a time, or 2 5-gallon buckets at a time. And, you know, a 5-gallon bucket of earth, you know, wet earth, rock, and sand is between 75 and 120 pounds. So you do the math, it's at least 15,000 pounds of just stuff. And so I was scared to be in there, because this 200-year-old cabin, the beams are probably 48 inches on center. You know, it's not like every 24 inches there's a beam. They're big beams that I thought this whole thing could implode, and if you're in the house when it happens, you're dead. Because it's waterlogged, it's got a ton of extra weight, and I'm bouncing around in here just trying to get it clean. So until we got the weight out of there, I was very concerned about it. This might be that group. I better take this.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
This is your barn here too, that's all lopsided?
Yeah, that actually was a guest house at one point, and then it was a home for a chimpanzee, and then it was a home for an African parrot, and now it's my tool shed. So it's been a lot of things. This place is 200 years old. This structure right here is probably 130, 140, same as that one. Yeah. So I'm trying to save it, because it is also, in my opinion, a historic structure. And it's pretty well built to get picked up and spiked like that and not come to pieces. Oh. So, right. You know, termites and all, it took the hit, and we'll see if we can't recover. But this was my driveway. Oh, okay. This was my garden. Now it's a creek. This is the driveway. This is where I got to get some serious help.
This is the cleaning equipment you're talking about for?
No, cleaning equipment's for inside the actual cabin. But
what do you think is needed to remove something like this?
Well, lots of material, because some of my material right now is probably all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. I know that my propane tank wound up in Canton, North Carolina, which is 60 miles away. Really? 250-pound propane tank, you know, got swept away with everything else. I'd say 90% of my firewood is gone. I had some firewood in that building up there, but I had 2 cords of wood gone. So I heat with wood, that's a problem. But in order to fulfill this, really I want to cherry pick the boulders out and set them over there, because I want to line this branch with the larger boulders, put 150 tons of riprap inside this hole, cover it up with some road bond, and then I'll have a driveway back, and then I'll fix my septic, reconnect the water, and then we'll have a livable structure for, you know, for 21st century humans, right? Right. I'm kind of camping in it, and I'll get my wife back in here, get my animals back in here, and then we'll start making real progress. But I got to build a retaining wall behind the place to protect me from flood, and you know, the house has been gutted, so I've got to rebuild all that.
And you had to build this new driveway?
So this actually was here. So this right up to here, you know, this came right through here, and it exactly where this gorge is went up around there. And I've got 3 parking plateaus up there I could only reach with an alternate access point, one of them. But when I came here with the car and trailer, it took me 3 hours to unload the car and trailer, because I'm picking up things, you know, one basket at a time and bringing them into the house. And with just one person, and you're walking up a hill, it's exponentially harder than being at the steps. I mean, it sounds trivial. Say, that's only another 100 feet. It matters. Yeah. It matters. And not having water matters, because instead of a commode, I have a bucket.
Yeah, I mean, just like the guy down at the store, he's like, he worked all this time to finally save up to get that store. And
So
man,
I spent my life savings to buy this.
Yeah.
And bought it cash, didn't finance it, had insurance on it. But at 3,100 foot of elevation, it'd have to be like Noah's Ark episode for it to flood up here, right?
Yeah.
What I didn't really consider, there's a phenomenon here. This is historically a place called Cold Holler.
Yeah.
And it's always 5 degrees colder because the way the peaks work, that cold air flows down and it flows down through here. If I had really been a super critical thinker, I probably would have thought, hey man, how'd this holler get here in the first place? Well, water cut it. But I will say that cabin's been here for 200 years, so that gave me some sense of the permanence of this. And although the cabin's still there, it very nearly wasn't. I pulled 15,000 pounds of debris out of the first floor and 6,000 pounds out of the root cellar. I had, 3-foot rock slide came to the back of the house. And although the bones of the house withstood it somehow, because it's chestnut, it's built in the old Scandinavian style. So our German immigrant ancestors are the ones who built this. And they built things with a sense of permanence and integrity that a modern home, you couldn't afford to build it today.
Have you seen a lot of the modern homes just get swept away without?
Oh, they look like a train went through them.
Yeah.
Like when a mudslide hits a house, it explodes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like someone shooting a watermelon with a shotgun. People are like, oh, what happened? They're like, your house looks like confetti, like a rock slide. I mean, it's the amount of energy that mud going downhill. If you've got like that's probably at least a 40% grade.
Yeah.
And so that mud and that water's going 70 miles an hour. And with that kind of weight and that kind of inertia, it's almost irresistible force.
Right.
Almost, because obviously some things can tolerate it, but most things can't. And I got very lucky. In spite of what happened, I got very lucky.
Yeah.
But this the water cut this, and I used to think that fire was the most destructive force of nature. Now I'm like, no, it's got to be water. Water in the storms, because the hurricane, when you go somewhere and all the trees are laid down, that was gale force winds that pushed the water, loosened up the root base. It lost some soil, so then it was no longer stable and it got pushed over. When you see them and they're like 20 foot off the ground and they're sheared off, like someone went through with like a scythe, then that was a tornado. And so we had both. I don't know how many tornadoes came through here, but dozens. And it's almost like we only had a Cat 3 hurricane, and people go, well, that's not a big deal. Well, it is if you're here and the valleys canalize the wind and accelerate it and potentiate it in certain focused areas. Long piece of granite is crisscrossed with quartz veins. And I'll show you something else when we come over here.
So was there a creek here before?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's been a creek here for 10,000 years.
Okay.
That's why people settled here. This is what's called a wet holler.
Oh.
And, it's all well and good in the modern era to settle somewhere that's dry and then run a pipe down the mountain to hit the river. But 200 years ago, you had to have water on your property. You cannot live without water. It's like air. You get 2 minutes with no air, 2 days with no food, 2 weeks without, 2 days without water, 2 weeks without food. You can't make it long without those things. So this was the big gift.
Oh.
That wasn't, well, it's been there since the mountain's been there.
Yeah.
It's been there since Earth was created, but it wasn't revealed to us until the storm. And I call that right there our little baptismal pool, because I thought it's like one of the few eddies of water that actually has some depth to it. And I saw it when I was walking up the old road. And I said, oh look honey, X marks the spot. And my wife walked down here and she looked up, she said, look, it's not an X, it's a cross. So if you look right over there, you'll see, basically a vertical and a horizontal quartz intersection, and it's in the shape of a cross. And so we feel pretty grateful for that. Yeah. One, it's a beautiful feature. We didn't have this here before. And now we just have something I think is quite beautiful. So once we get recovered, I really believe that we'll be better, functionally and aesthetically and spiritually and physically than we were before.
Right.
But it'll take every bit of 2 years for us to get to that point.
They're right here?
You get top if you want. So this is all on my property, and before it was 6 or 8 foot wide, about 3 foot deep. It's very different now. And I've got my neighbor the day afterwards risked his life to get some video footage of what was coming through the property. It looked like the Mississippi coming through. It was insane the amount of water that was coming through here. Coming through over that back of the property, coming around both sides of the cabin, sweeping across the entirety of the property. For like days. Now here's something that's above. Every one of the mountains has got some water on their property. Above them, now they have something like this. And this is potentially very dangerous because that's why our bridges are gone. You know, you get these log jams and the rocks and the water builds up behind it, and you get much more potential energy then. And when it does release, it's like a train all of a sudden going downhill. Like this is all tolerable. But if you get, you know, 100,000 gallons of water behind it, the inertia that builds up as it sweeps down, that's just one episode. But all up the mountain, you've got all these little log jams. And so the fear is that the next time we have a significant rain event, those will break loose. We're already fragile, we're already vulnerable. That'll sweep through an already vulnerable area and cause, you know, second, third order effects that are as bad or worse than the first order. But it's still beautiful here.
It is, yeah. And this all used to be much higher than this in the water level?
That right there is what it used to look like right there.
Okay.
And so, honestly, this little tree right here, I would use that to step down, and I could step down right where that moss is. That's about how deep it was right there.
Yeah.
None of this rock was exposed. Not a square inch of it. So everything's exposed now. It is there, but it just was covered up with earth. It's been a long time since we had that kind of water in this region.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I love it.
Nice property.
Yeah. These are old logging trails.
Oh, okay.
Before they were logging trails, they were carriage trails to take people up the top of the mountain. And before that, they were probably footpaths.
Yeah. Does this make this area any better for farming or anything like that?
Quite the contrary.
Yeah.
So that the entire valley was just rolling, green, gorgeous, verdant fields. And now at least about 40% of it's all silted out. And that silt's not arable land. It's, you know, nobody grows corn on the beach.
Yeah, so even the farming aspects of this community is
We came here,
hampered by it.
like I said, I was here a couple days afterwards, and I was talking to some firefighters. I wanted to go up the hill to check on my friend Marla, because I'd heard she'd been evacuated. And I was discussing whether or not we wanted to take the chance to go up on the opposite side of the mountain, check on her. And all these cows came walking up to us. And cows don't walk up to strangers. They're used to their farmer. But these cows were like, I don't care who he is. He's a two-leg. We're going to get some help.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for those animals. And so all those animals had to be sold. You know,
Yeah.
whatever their original intended purpose was, you know, it's between just going to day-to-day survival here and trying to restore your property and earn enough money to care for your family. if you had a side hustle in beef, you no longer had that extra bandwidth to accomplish any of that
I
work.
heard a lot of people were getting offers to sell their land and stuff like that, and I saw some for sale signs and whatnot.
There's definitely some carpetbaggers.
Yeah.
You know, people came up here and offered someone 10 cents on the dollar for their land, and it's shameful because a lot of people have been here for 5 generations, and like the household income's approaching $40,000 a year. And so the only reason why they're able to stay here is because they inherited the land and the home and the properties.
Mm-hmm.
And if that home gets destroyed, I mean, look at what a home costs to build. Even a basic home, even if it's just a box with utilities, it's $400,000 to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's assuming you already own land. So, they don't have the means to do it, so they'll sell.
Yeah.
Either that or they'll lose everything, and then they'll lose, you can either sell it and have something to start over somewhere else, or you can just not pay the taxes and let the state take it from you. Like if your house is just declared like a disaster, the child protection agencies could come and say, you are a bad parent, you are not taking care of your children will be taken away from you if you don't get out of here. So now you got choices, right? And the choice probably isn't going to be take the kids, and the choice probably isn't going to be, we're going to fight to the death over this. They're not going to be up here with a bunch of carbines and shoot people as you come up the road. That's not in their nature to do that. So they're going to move, and they're going to lose 5 generations worth of work, start over. That to me is a huge tragedy. And if they don't make that hard decision, the state will make that decision for them to their detriment. That's my fear. That's where I think the real pain is. It's one thing to survive this and try and claw your way back. It's another thing to lose everything your family came to this country to build.
Right.
And it's not to their own, they didn't become drug addicts or gamblers or anything. It was bad day, bad couple of days. But that's why there are accidents, that's why there's disasters, and that's quite frankly why we need some help. It took about 80 years to put all this infrastructure in. And so friends of mine are saying, well, it's been 4.5, 5 months. Are you guys recovered yet? And it's like, no, man, not even close. Like, the roads we put in are quite frankly temporary roads. Like, there's a sedimentary process to build a Department of Transportation road so that moisture can flow through it, it can be irrigated properly. You can't just bulldoze everything flat and put blacktop on top of it. That's what we've done. That's a temporary road. They'll have to come back, tear that road up, and put in like an actual graded road. We'll have to put in larger diameter culverts because now we can see the volume of water that could come through here. I don't know if they're saying this is a once in 200 year, once in 500 year event. I'm not going to bet my farm on that. It might happen next year. So I'm going to try to set conditions to where I can withstand an event similar to that and not have catastrophe. By the way, that is not compacted soil. I've fallen in here 3 times. You're more agile than I am, but
Yeah, you never know.
you don't want to catch yourself on video falling. They're deep. Very deep. I was standing right here on that boulder, and I was over there, and I saw a bucket in here to get some water. And it was like a cartoon. Literally, I watched the boulder fall. I looked at my feet, and then I fell. I was like, it happened that fast. And then I fell on the boulder, and the boulder started rolling, and I shimmied up the boulder. And my wife was like, oh my God, are you okay? And I was like, yes. I had a wallet, and I had 2 sets of gloves. I landed on that, and you really can't get hurt
Must
too
have
bad.
been quite a spectacle.
Oh, yeah, I think it was cartoony.
And you got a bridge made here?
Oh, yeah, that is a highly exquisitely designed,
Modern
engineered to perfection.
Oh, ratchet straps thrown in.
Hey, man, ratchet straps are good for all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But we had all of my tools were in my tool shed,
Right.
and a lot of things that are like kind of persistent elements of prep were in there too. So anything that wasn't vulnerable to moisture was in there. I did not think we would have a Mississippi come through here and pick up my storage shed and spike it somewhere else on the property.
Right. So this didn't used to be right here. It was somewhere else.
It was up the hill.
Oh.
Like it not only got turned sideways, it got picked up and it got slammed into that. So that's actually, although it's probably 140 years old, it is extraordinarily well built, and I'm going to try to save that too. And once we fill this in, we'll come along it over, we'll dig this out, and I'll try and come along it back. And if it survives, then my God, it deserves to be here.
Maybe keep it slanted and make it like a
No.
weird.
No, I know. Like other people have made that observation. Like, wouldn't it be interesting? Like, no, because walking in there is very difficult. And it's very difficult to have any utility for it. So I mean, even now I could jack it up, make it level, but I don't want to break it free of whatever grab it's in. I want it to stay grabbed. I can walk around in there. I can get stuff out, and things only come out right now. And I suspect if we try and pull out of that position, we'll probably pull the building to pieces, but maybe not. Like it survived this, might survive some more.
Yeah.
And I mean, the old chicken coop up there is my woodshed. The old chicken coop over there. All these things are old, but they're built out of locust. And like locust wood, you know, it gets harder. Like if you leave a locust beam in the ground for 80 years, you pull it out, it's like a concrete parking stop. Anything else would be gone. Locust wood's just insane how quickly it mineralizes and how rot resistant it is. There's very few woods that are such a superior building material.
Yeah.
So that's all mill cut locust wood up there, and that's all chestnut over there. So chestnut's probably the best, but it was blighted and it doesn't exist in this country at any kind of density. It can't grow to any kind of dimensions anymore. And locust is kind of in that same boat now.
Yeah.
And I used to do a lot, you know, this was my range before, so I had a walk and shoot, and I'd, you know, walk and shoot, and pistol and carbine and some shotgun. And, you know, strangely enough, all the targets are still in place, it's just the rest of the property is not here. This slope didn't suffer very much, but I do have some anxiety about it, because you see that, like that shale layer in the strata. For days we had, I mean, it was just fountaining water out in that stratification. And that tells me that there's potentially some, you know, like now you got all that weight and all that mass, and you get a little bit more lubricated of a slope. I'm really glad that slope didn't come down too. In some places it did.
Mm-hmm.
So we were probably fortunate that we didn't have something come down this way.
Looks like that tree kind of caught the shed there, that white tree.
Yeah, I think that tree's done for. That heroic tree. But, yeah, I mean, this was an island. Like he built this, Daniel Phillips with his excavator built this back. My truck was right here, and it was, you couldn't get it out.
Yeah.
The water came through on both sides, and it, short of having a ramp and jumping it out like Dukes of Hazzard, you weren't going to move it anywhere. We burned it for 3 days because after it's been in a flood,
Kind of moldy.
well, it's, you know, the earth that was in here was this anaerobic muck. It was things that had been 10 foot underground, and it's decomposing, but it smelled fecal in nature. It was very foul. So it was a lot of work to get it cleaned up. We're down to the subfloor here, and then we gutted the kitchen. And I kind of made a camp kitchen in here just temporarily. But this is how I'm living now.
Yeah.
And this will be, get a refrigerator brought up Monday, so this will be my alternate camp kitchen slash, was the guest bedroom, but it'll be, you know, put a refrigerator here, then I'll be able to have non-shelf stable food, so I'll quit poisoning myself with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm living off some stale croissants that we found at the end of the
It's just
moment.
poison. Like every time I eat somewhere, I feel sick afterwards, because I normally eat like very, very whole foods.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, okay, restaurant food's good food. Why am I so sick afterwards?
I guess that's why that volunteer stuff was able to help some people with that food, because we were cooking like vegetables and stuff.
Enormously, because they cook a, you know,
Refrigerator.
like basically a kettle the size of the hood of your car full of food, and it would be just an absolute cauldron of food, and it was good basic stuff, but it didn't have 100 things in it. It had 4 things in it.
Mm-hmm.
There's something I do want to show you on the property. You know, when you have catastrophes and everything seems very bleak, it's extremely important to kind of find, okay, where's the good in this?
Yeah.
And you know, we lost some people we knew, they died outright, and people that we're very close to suffered mightily. They had terrible things that happened to them. They're isolated, they're cut off up in Cattail for about 2 weeks. And people say, well, if you live in a remote area, you should be prepared to be isolated for a couple weeks at a time. And they were.
Mm-hmm.
But like my prep here, 80% of it was destroyed. And so like my medical stuff, my food, my ammunition.
Yeah. Getting cut off from
It was
supply.
underwater. It was 3 foot underwater. Like there's not a lot of things that can survive that. And people put them in bins. They go, this is waterproof. And we're like, yeah, maybe. Maybe it is. Can it tolerate being underwater for 3 days? That's a different step.
Yeah, hurricane's a different kind of need for prepping. I mean, just like it's like an attack. It's not like just a cut off from supplies, I guess.
Well, I think it was also, there's a sense of hopelessness too, that I think that, you know, being older is a huge advantage, because you understand that hard times don't last. You also know that good times don't last, and there's a sine wave as you make your way through life. So if you're 20 years old and you suffer a disaster, it's all out of context. It seems like it's been terrible for years now. It's all trending bad. Take a breath, steel yourself, get ready. Things will change. Hard times don't last. Hard people do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to find positive things. And one of the things I thought was beautiful, like although that's a ravine where my driveway used to be, there's like 10 waterfalls in there. It has its own kind of sense of beauty. It's pretty. I'm going to destroy it. I'm going to put everything back inside the original branch because I need that piece of property right there. But I could look at it and I could say, in the midst of all this destruction, my God, it's still beautiful. It's still a beautiful place.